Welcome back to Unverified. It is the off season for almost everybody now. Still got a couple of Formula One races to go. Hello to everybody in the Formula One world tuning into Unverified. Can't imagine why that happened. We'll have to talk about that a little bit later on in this video. We had some signings. The NASCAR season ended on a really stupid note, and the stupidity continued today. I posted a video with Tony Kanaan today. I mean, it's been a hell of a week, gentlemen. How we doing? How we doing, race fans?
It's really funny when everybody's been posting, all of like our friends who, when the NASCAR season ends and they only cover IndyCar and NASCAR, how they're posting end of the season, and I just did a 10-hour day working on Super Nats content. Yeah, this is great. I wish I had an off season. That would be cool. Other than that, it's great.
Kyle's just
going great.
Just bitter.
I've been sitting at this desk for 10 hours today. I sat down at 10 a.m.
You had hopefully you had some lunch. I figured you would have got up and ran over to the local.
No, don't say that. Don't say that on the air. I haven't gotten over there yet. Don't say that yet.
There are F1 Legos at the Five Below and Speedway, and probably every other Five Below location in the United States as well. But, hey, if you walked into the Speedway Five Below, you'd have no clue that there was anything Indy 500, IndyCar related going on in this town. So that just continues to add to what I've been discussing on this show profusely. Everybody's mad at the NASCAR playoffs, at the endings. Everybody's mad at the way it went down. Everybody's disappointed for Denny Hamlin. Everybody is very disappointed in what happened with Connor Zilisch. And I think, guys, that's probably where we should start. Friday night, Corey Heim, he had a good season, won races. Lane Riggs was well in control of that race. Late race restart. They fan out 6, 7, 8 wide. It was exciting. Corey Heim takes the win. And then Saturday, we all tuned in. I think CW, first and foremost, has done a great job with the Xfinity Series this year and the coverage of that and hyping that up. And I think it's kind of came out for them on the other side when we see the ratings come out of how well they have been. And I think we all can look, and even the folks that don't maybe follow Xfinity have heard the name Connor Zilisch. He obviously won the Xfinity race here at Indianapolis Motor Speedway and had one of the best, if not the best, Xfinity Series season we have seen in a very long time. And he's not the champion. And I think there lies the immediate problem is a driver can have a dominant. It'd be like Alex Palou this season, winning all those races, winning the Indianapolis 500 and getting to Nashville, and he gets beat by somebody else in that one race and isn't crowned the champion. We'd all be up in arms. We'd all be pissed. We'd all be upset. We'd all be mad. So let's start with Connor Zilisch, the season that he had, and ultimately Jesse Love bringing home the Xfinity Championship. Kyle, I'll start with you because you've spent some time with Connor. We saw the post this weekend out of Kart Chaser, but I don't even think disappointing does it like that word doesn't do it justice. Just the season that he had, only to wind up not being the champion. Ultimately, when you're going to look back on his career, is that just going to be a blip on the radar? More than likely, because he's probably going to be a Cup champion. He's going to win some big-time races. But as of right now, where it's still a fresh wound, Kyle, on Saturday, Jesse Love, I think, wins his second race of the season and is your Xfinity champion. I think I've mentioned this. I have a little bit of a vendetta against Jesse Love, so I wasn't very happy about that. But, Kyle, your thoughts on Connor Zilisch not being the Xfinity champion?
Yeah, obviously with my employer, we were very we weren't really shy from saying who we were rooting for, right? I mean, everyone in the karting community was rooting for Connor Zilisch because his career has skyrocketed so quickly that, I've worked for Kart Chaser for 5 years, and at the start of the first 2, he was still in karting, right? So to think he was in go-karts in 2021, 2022 to where he is now is insane. And yeah, I mean, it put a lot of things in perspective, to be honest, because I have a lot of friends and family who never watched NASCAR, who watched a bit more frequently and were asking me, after the fact, like, how the hell did Connor not win that? Like, that doesn't make any sense. How does the guy who won 10 races and seemed to never lose not win the championship at the end of the year? And then you have to explain the playoff format. And, then at that point, obviously It's because people have a certain, love for Connor, but when you break it down, it doesn't make a lot of sense to people. And there's a lot to say on the playoff format, but that was, Friday was the correct ending. Saturday was not like that, because if you break it down in any other scenario besides a one race championship, Connor wins that. But it wasn't the first time. It really, in the same car, the 2 car, Tyler Reddick did that in the 9 car and the 2 car, where I think when Reddick's in the 2 car, it was deserved, but he did it in a junior motorsports car, where he won, I think, his 2nd race of the year at Homestead and ended up walking away with a title. Absolutely nowhere all season, but walked away with it. I mean, it was just disappointing.
Does Jesse Love get to test the V8 supercar now? Stephen Kilstonk wants to know.
Yeah, he's doing the Super 2 thing, which actually the Super 2 is cooler than the supercar now, some would argue, because it's still the Holden.
David, speaking of Saturday, your thoughts on what we saw at the Xfinity? I know you were dialed in, probably got yourself some Taco Bell where relax. Oh no, wait, we drug you out of the house. That's right.
I was out of the bunker on Saturday. Come on, Tony.
For those that don't know, David, this time of year, usually right around daylight savings time, which is what we saw all over the weekend, David likes to quote bunker down and just do his thing at his crib and not leave. And I guess we can't blame it for him, but he was drug out of the house, kicking and screaming on Saturday to join us and a few other friends, but. Man, it was Connor was kind of right there all day, but wasn't like a dominating car. And then obviously towards the end, he had taken the lead. But then Jesse Love takes over. We're going to talk about the Goodyear tire problems in the Cup race as well. But your overall thoughts, David, on what we saw on Saturday with Jesse Love.
Listen, I'm glad you dragged me out of the house. I got more laps on Jason's simulator of the Cadillac hypercar than Connor's ever going to get in his life, I guess, because, the whole weekend was tough. I mean, you look at, especially, you talk about the truck race. Corey Heim went into that race with 11 wins, I think it was, and obviously got his 12th. But between him and Connor, you just knew going into that weekend that one of those 2 drivers – there was no scenario that I looked at going into that weekend that both of those drivers would end up winning their respective championships. One of them was going to lose. And when Corey Heim won his championship in the Truck Series with, let's be honest, exactly what NASCAR wanted to create with the playoffs. You have a driver who has been so dominant the entire year, and it comes down still to the last corner of the last lap, the last restart. And oh, by the way, he makes an 8-wide pass to take the lead. Like that's exactly how NASCAR designed that format to work. It did not work on Saturday because Connor Zilisch had the 3rd place car. It was not like he did not look like a driver who was undeserving of a championship. They just didn't have a race winning car, and Jesse Love did. And not only does he lose the Drivers' Championship in a season which they have been so dominant in, but Junior Motorsports in the 88 lost the Owners' Championship to the 19 car, which passed Connor with just a couple of laps to go as well. So you have not only the dominant driver, but the dominant team. Neither of those entities receiving hardware at the end of the year, I think, is one of the biggest problems we've ever seen. I mean, yes, Matt Crafton won a championship in the Truck Series, 5 or 6 years ago, having not won a single race. And quite honestly, the fact that happened in the Truck Series, I think, is the only reason that this format has survived as long as it has. Because now that the spotlight, I mean, you mentioned it. I mean, what a gigantic contrast between the spotlight that's on the Truck Series and the spotlight that's on the Xfinity and, of course, the Cup Series, is that Kyle, you had all those people in your life reaching out to you asking, wait a second, why didn't Connor win the championship? I thought he won every race in the summer, which he pretty much did. This is definitely the straw that broke the camel's back, but I'm sure as we're going to continue to discuss throughout this night, I don't know if just suddenly going back to 2003 or even going back to 2004 with the chase is just suddenly going to turn this thing around. I mean, there is a deep rot in NASCAR, and it's proven, very, very strongly when a driver like Connor Zilisch, who's had the season that he has, doesn't win the championship, and then insult to injury, the FIA announces that he's not eligible to go test a hypercar in Bahrain, despite the fact that he won the Rolex 24 and the Sebring 12 hours back-to-back in the LMP2 category, when I could go win the lottery tomorrow, get my bronze license, and go to the 24 hours of Le Mans this year. There's something wrong with everybody's systems. Everybody's wrong. I hate it.
And I think when you look back, and I want your guys' opinion on this and in the chat as well. Is this not, though, what NASCAR probably wanted, right? Was it to come down to a Super Bowl type, that last game? Obviously, in the NFL, Major League Baseball, we saw go 7 games into the World Series last Saturday night. But isn't this what NASCAR wanted, was down to that last lap, down to the last restart of, hey, every other sport, you got to perform in the playoffs. Doesn't matter if the Colts go 18-0 in the playoffs. Doesn't matter if this team wins or 18-0 in the regular season. They have to perform in the playoffs and win that last game/race of the year. So on paper, technically, isn't this not exactly what NASCAR was probably hoping for? I mean, obviously, it would be perfect if it was the deserving champion was the champion, but it came down to the last lap in one of the most dominating seasons in Xfinity history. But isn't that kind of what NASCAR's going, well, if he had a 117-point lead heading into Phoenix and all he had to do was take the green flag, there's less drama. People aren't going to tune in. It's not going to come down to the wire. He's going to already have it locked up. Hell, he could have it locked up Alex Palou style by the time they get to the last race of the season.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. On paper, what happened on Saturday was exactly what NASCAR wanted. And I think, unfortunately, to your point, Tony, it's what they've conditioned their fan base to accept. You know, what's funny about Alex Palou, I mean, you've got what a contrast we have, because Alex Palou wrapped the IndyCar Championship up with 2 races to go, effectively had it wrapped up, I would say, by Laguna Seca. Like, I left Laguna Seca going, all right, Alex Palou's won the championship, right? And yet, one of the biggest TV ratings of the entire season was the season finale that had nothing championship-wise on the line. Even second place in the championship was wrapped up and clinched by the time we got to Nashville.
Speed oval.
Well, that's exactly right, but that's what IndyCar has done a good job of, is that even if the championship fight, and by the way, the IndyCar Championship has only been decided, you know, before the last race, the last couple of years, with Alex Palou going on a historically, I mean, he is AJ Foyt, Al Unser Sr., Mario Andretti levels of good, right? Without him, the IndyCar Championship from 2008 to like whatever it was, 2022, came down to the last race every single year with a regular season points championship. So even though, you know, you had this incredible championship fight in IndyCar, it doesn't seem to affect whether or not IndyCar fans tune in to an IndyCar race. IndyCar fans tune in to watch the race first, the championship second. And I'm not sure NASCAR fans are necessarily tuning in for the championship, but the problem is the championship format creates these moments, creates the Hail Melon, right? Or Kevin Harvick wrecking the field at Talladega. These things that, and I'll be honest, I fall into that sometimes. Would I have tuned in? Would I have watched a single lap of the Roval if it wasn't a chase cutoff race? Hell no. The Roval sucks, right? But like, I'm sitting there going, well, there's probably going to be chaos at some point. Something stupid's going to happen. And if I'm not watching it, you know, and so that's where NASCAR is really going to have some trouble, is trying to have their cake and eat it too. How do you have a format that pleases hardcore racing fans who will rip them to shreds when the right guy doesn't win the championship, but at the same time placate all of these fans who have been, you know, joining the sport in the last 10, 20 years, who are used to this kind of racing, who are used to this chaos at the end of the season, and will tune in and then not get that, and then they'll tune out. It's a hell of a situation that they're in right now.
I think you'd get that either way. I think the way that I've thought about it and is, you know, all of the gimmicks kind of compounded together. I really love this comment from that IndyCar fan. Would we be talking about this if Zilich and Hamlin won? There's 2 different stories, because, you know, Zilich, I feel like, had such a dominant season that the format really didn't, I mean, it was the worst case scenario for what NASCAR like would have wanted. And all the fans were really upset because I think everyone felt like Zilich was the most deserving. So yes, I mean, if Zilich would have won, I don't think anybody really would have said anything. Problem with the Cup race was Denny Hamlin straight up won that race. I think based on the format and Tony's point, isn't this what NASCAR wants? So I think what NASCAR wants and what all the fans want out of this format, even if you hate it, is what we got on Sunday with the championship 4 going 4 wide in turn 1 and duking it out. And what we saw was Denny Hamlin. Like I was actually like excited and happy at the end of the race because that guy was locked in. Those last 20 laps, once Hamlin got the lead and just kept extending the gap on Byron. Like that guy drove, and you can see why he's so dejected because I want to see the lap times of that stint because it was cool to watch in that moment a guy who had worked 20 years to win a title just start running away with it. And then because of the overtime restart, granted it was a bad pit decision, it all changed. I think that's honestly probably worst case scenario in NASCAR's format. And I don't think if you asked the people running NASCAR that they would have wanted that specific ending. Maybe the guy's getting sued directly, maybe, but I think that if Hamlin would have won, no, but not because he was the most deserving, not because he won the damn race by far and should have won that title. And then, the gimmicks of NASCAR kind of compounded together. There's a lot of things there.
I mean, he was dominant. He was dominant on Sunday. And it was like on my left shoulder, it was like, Denny's going to win this. Denny has the best car. He's pulling away. There's 5 laps to go. This is finally going to be it. And then on my other shoulder, I was like, yeah, dude, but it's NASCAR. Somebody's going to spin around. Somebody's going to biff it. It happened to be William Byron, which set up his teammate Kyle Larson to come in and, like Kyle mentioned, go on a little bit of a different tire strategy there towards the end. And Kyle Larson ultimately wins the NASCAR Cup Championship. Another question to you guys: why the hell do we have stages in the final?
I was wondering that too.
Like, we're not racing for points, or you don't need those points. Why are we throwing more yellows in here? And I'm not saying the strategy or anything would have been different. But, we could have saw something different if there was maybe, 10 to 15 more laps of green as to the yellow for a stage break that was awarded no points.
It would have made the tire strategy like better, or not better, but it would make it would have been more chaotic because I think you would have blown tires a bit more often, I think.
I feel like we've been asking that question ever since the stage cautions were introduced. It's like, okay, well, but again, the answer is chaos. The answer is that you can have
on wheels.
You can have everybody tweet out on the internet, right? Like, hey, stage 3 is beginning. Turn off your football. Now the race matters, right? Like literally. I know that's when I tuned in because my Coats had finally officially lost to the damn Steelers. And I was like, all right, I ain't want to watch the Coats no more. The Coats suck. Colts are bad. Coats ain't going to win anything.
I think it's fine.
But it was like, man, I do want to highlight a comment if we can. K-Ben, which I think, and this is so funny because I think a lot of you guys know it's up a little bit, 8:15 p.m. The whole thing like this year with Alex Palou, the minute he got dominant, which I think was around Barber, like the minute you're sitting there going, oh, shoot, he's going to have this championship clinched by like Detroit, right? You started hearing the push from the media. Or, well, not the media. Let me be very clear. I'm part of the media, and I wasn't pushing for this. But, like, you hear some media members starting to ask the questions, and especially at Nashville. Like, I mean, there was one guy who was asking every single driver if IndyCar should have a playoff system. And I'm sitting there just kind of going, and now that we're sitting here, of course, hindsight's 2020. But what a ridiculous conversation that ever was coming up in any capacity whatsoever. I mean, it was ridiculous when, like, I remember Mark Miles brought it up or floated the possibility of doing a playoff, 5 or 6 years ago. And I remember how passionately the fan base kind of rejected that then. And now to still kind of hear it come up every now and then, especially now, it's like now that even NASCAR's fan base has rejected this, why on earth would you ever talk about this as a serious talking point ever again?
Well, I'll say this about IndyCar, and it was kind of discussed, and it was discussed towards the end of the 2024 season. There's some things behind the scenes that were going on, which may have led or not led to the removal of Nashville being the last race of the season. I know it has been talked about this year because Fox was going, all right, well, hey, Alex Palou's going to have this thing wrapped up. One, don't do playoffs IndyCar. Nobody wants that. You could look on David Land's Twitter. You could look on my Twitter account. Nobody wants that. If you want to keep your fan base happy, well, I would rather see Alex Palou be dominant. And
you can ask everybody in the industry.
Yeah, be wrapped
Jeff
up.
Gluck is a good follow for that, I think.
Yeah. Two, it's amazing on what is said on this show that gets taken by a crap ton of other Instagram sites, which we'll get into, other people that are trying to do some things in motorsports. You mentioned the guy that was asking every driver in Nashville about the playoffs. Well, that lined up exactly what we had talked about that week on this show and what we had tweeted out. But, I go back to NASCAR wanting to be WWE on wheels. And like you said, chaos and gimmicks. And look, all forms of racing have gimmicks. Look, I'm not saying that IndyCar is any different. We've had double points, double file restarts. IndyCar's had, push to pass. And the hybrid itself has just been a total gimmick. If we really want to break that down, we got plenty of off season to talk about that. But again, I'm not happy. I don't like that it went down, but I do think NASCAR was going, hey, this is why we created this. And people were watching towards the end, and it came down to the last lap. But please, IndyCar, don't ever go to playoffs. We don't need it. Don't want it. What is he saying? Days is under. Don't need it. Don't want. Couldn't buy it if I had it or something along those lines. We don't need it.
We don't need this. But I'll tell you what, Nuke Shot Media has.
Speaking of, we'll have to talk about that.
We'll talk about him here in a second.
They
Nuke
don't
Shot
need
Media,
that shit.
the media member with the initials JB, who of course he's talking about Jordan Bianchi, saying that there are not enough storylines to cover if there aren't any playoffs. All right, I'm going to take a small devil's advocate approach here because on the surface, Jordan Bianchi was absolutely wrong to say that. Here's why he said that. Because I think, so here's the deal. There's a lot of outlets that are specifically reactionary outlets, right? They get their clicks from sticking a camera in a driver's face at the end of the race where they MF somebody, right? It's not like there are several outlets that do this. I don't mind that. Like, trust me, I watch the Matt Crafton thing too. Everybody watch because everybody just wants to see people shit on NASCAR, right? Or shit on somebody else. Like, it's entertaining. Without the playoffs, without those storylines, without those heated moments, there are going to be less clicks generated or less guarantee for a media member that you're going to get a certain number of clicks. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if specifically George, I don't know how everybody's deals work. I know how my specific deal works. And if you can, if you can position yourself in a place where you're going to capture something dramatic or talk about something dramatic, it's going to lead to clicks. And if you're incentivized for that, you're going to lean in that direction 100%. And that's where we see the internet and media leaning towards. So when I hear Jordan Bianchi say something like that, it was wrong to say, but I see where it's coming from because that is an argument that that media members can make to say, well, my business is created or my business relies on drama. And if you are not making the most dramatic format possible, I'm not going to be able to do what I need to do to cover the sport. Now, that is a problem with the sport itself. I think we all suffer from that. I mean, I remember a conversation that we were all having with some other media members a couple of days ago where we're talking about how, lamenting how there's no speed channel and there's no spots and we'd all just wish we, we're making 150 a year, right? But like, that's just not the reality. That's not how things are set up right now. I think in an ideal world, we can all just show up to the racetrack and write stories about people in the garage area and how great everybody's cat is doing, or, somebody adopted a dog recently. But at the end of the day, and this is specifically a NASCAR problem, but it does kind of trickle down to other forms of motorsport and the way media is set up now with social media and how reactionary content and how content that elicits very strong emotions is so heavily favored. It's tough because the stuff that makes you money is also the stuff that makes everybody look the worst. And I don't know how you solve that problem.
Yeah, I mean, TMZ is making a boat ton of money every day off of that type of stuff. And I would say this, you go back to the Nashville IndyCar finale, right? what were we talking about? What was the biggest story heading into for the people that were covering IndyCar, that were serious about covering IndyCar? They weren't trying to make up something with the playoff. What was the number one story that everybody was chasing that weekend? It had nothing to do with anything that was on the track. IndyCar, thankfully, it was a good race. There was some drama towards the end. We had a Joseph Newgarden win. We had a Kiffin Simpson top 4. Connor Daly was running up there. It created storylines. But everybody that weekend, everybody wanted to talk with Will Power. And it was like, okay, we kind of know he's probably going to Andretti, but what is he going to tell us? Where is he going to end up? I mean, you and I, the three of us, I think Kyle was there after Milwaukee when he was talking about, oh, what are you hearing about where I'm going and that type of stuff. But IndyCar still has the drama, right? I don't think you need the playoffs. To your point, going into Nashville, I know we talked about storylines, right? It was, okay, can Joseph Newgarden win in his hometown, which I think was an okay storyline. I'm not saying people were tuning in because, oh my God, I don't think people care outside of the hardcore Joseph Newgarden fans that he could win in his hometown. People want to know where Will Power was going. That was certainly a topic of conversation.
Was Colton Herta leaving was another one?
Do what?
Was Colton Herta leaving was one. The Alex Palou drama with Red Bull was one. I mean, there was a lot of storylines.
All off of the racetrack type stuff.
Yes.
But at the end of the race, we were talking about, holy crap, Kiffin battling with Scott McLaughlin. Joseph Newgarden wins. Palou obviously wraps up the championship. We knew that
Dixon's
was coming.
pit crew. Dixon's pit crew was a big one. Yeah.
There was a lot of drama manufactured because of the pure racing. And that's would be my argument why IndyCar doesn't need the playoff format as much as maybe NASCAR does.
I mean, I think, to just David already said it that, on the surface it was wrong, but it's also wrong because I mean, from my perspective, the playoffs suck also because I do not care about spring Dover. I do not care about spring Texas, Kansas, all the stupid tracks. I watch the races of the tracks that I know are going to provide good races and the crown jewels. And with the playoff system, I just don't care until the playoffs come around and I know that they're racing for a championship. And then I'm angry because they're racing in the freaking playoffs. So when you get rid of the playoffs, then every race matters. I think one of the things that IndyCar has and does right, even though F1 does this right because they have a 24 race calendar, which I think is a bit better than 17 that IndyCar has. But I mean, IndyCar, the championship matters from race number 1. Yep. It matters when something happens in the middle of a race. If William Byron blows a tire in stage 2 at Spring, Kansas, the drama isn't there because it doesn't freaking matter. And what would make it matter? If you went to a full season points format and then guess what? You lose all your playoff shit to talk about, but you get to talk about something in the spring and you can generate clicks for a whole year rather than your fall, which is already it's already terrible because that's when the NFL starts and nobody cares about NASCAR. The ratings are already bad, which is a point in one of my tweets the other day was the ratings are awful. Nobody's watching anyways. So why are we doing this? Well, the casuals, like I said to start the show, the casuals are confused. I have people asking me all the time, how the hell did Connor not win that? The ratings suck. Why?
Dude, that was such a banger, dude. That was Kyle. Kyle just cooked. I just want to chat. Kyle just cooked a 5-star Michelin star meal right there. What a freaking great point. I mean, I guess the one thing I would add to that is the greatest example I can give of the IndyCar points mattering is remember, I think it was 2021, if I remember correctly, Joseph got crashed on the first lap of Barber, which I think was the season opener. And that screwed him the entire year. He was fighting on the back foot the entire rest of the year. And I think he lost the championship specifically because of the second corner of the first race. Yep. That's exactly man, that's such a great point, Kyle, that you're spreading out the storylines over the season. You're my God, you've reinvigorated me to want a 36 race NASCAR championship again. I mean, that's the greatest point ever.
Why am I watching stage 2 of Spring Dover?
And with the 17 race IndyCar season, there's less room for error. Look at Will Power this year. Remember, dumped on the first lap at St. Pete. him and Nolan Siegel in that accident, he never recovered. Obviously, what happened in May happened in May, but even like 2 to 3 races into the season, you're like, oh, we're coming out of thermal and we're going into Barber. And obviously, I think you kind of throw the points out in the month of May because you're going for race wins and that type of situation. But by June, you really do have a clear picture of those 3 or 4 teams that are going to have an opportunity to compete for the championship. So if that puts a bow on, go ahead.
Like David said, like when Newgarden spun, if someone is like Joseph, it usually happened to Joseph, like he has 2 titles and should have 4 because in one of the first 4, Pato O'Ward's a perfect example. I think part of that, he doesn't heat up until the summer. And if there was a playoff system, Pato would probably have won the championship the past 3-4 years.
Scott Dixon, 2 summers. Was it 2 summers ago when he got hot and won Gateway and won Nashville on the streets and was really, he was competing for the championship, but he had just gotten off to such a slow start that he didn't even winning those races. The IndyCar Championship incredibly rewards consistency.
We can go back with, you mentioned Scott Dixon. We can go back to not only the first race of the season, we can track where Scott Dixon lost the championship last year to testing in Sebring, losing an engine.
Yeah.
Because he knew he was going to have grid penalties the entire rest of the season. He lost an engine on the first lap of testing in Sebring and knew he was going to lose the championship. That tells you every moment matters in IndyCar racing. If that doesn't tell you, I don't know what else could, possibly.
And think about it, the Indy 500 doesn't have double points anymore, but with 33 cars, it's the points are spread out the most because if you finish, 33rd or past 27th, really, you're getting what, 1 point?
5 points.
5 points. So, and we've seen a lot of guys, Colton Herta, wreck a car in practice or qualifying, and then they have a shit 500 and then have terrible points. And then you can track back the Indy 500. So that then your season gets drawn back to a practice crash at the Indy 500. Or even a testing crash, like, whatever.
We're going to send some into the wall at Phoenix. I can't wait to be there to see that.
Speaking of testing, there is some testing going on in the IndyCar world this week. Dennis Hauger and Kyle Collette, 2 rookies, will take their oval test on Friday from the Nashville Superspeedway. I believe Alexander Rossi and Scott Dixon are testing in Phoenix this week. This will not be the only test in Phoenix. We'll see something probably in the early part of the 2026 season with more than likely the full field. Hey, I did mention this, and this is the only information I know, so I wanted to make this clear. There was a crash at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway on Tuesday. It did involve the 2-seater. I know that the driver and the passenger were transported to the hospital. I don't think it's any kind of dire situation, or I wouldn't have brought it up. But they were back out there today, and they were simply testing what went wrong. So if you heard the 2-seaters from your house, David, they were just being ran by one driver. So hopefully the driver, who is a former Indy Next driver, is okay. The passenger's okay, and we'll move on from there. But we do have some testing this week, and we do have some dude bro sources. I guess that probably was a dude bro source. So
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I think we will dive into some speculation, some rumors that we have heard. It was mentioned on my Twitter. It was mentioned on this show about Yuki Tsunoda and the chances of him possibly being in IndyCar next season, and kind of tying it together of how well he enjoyed being in an IndyCar a year ago when he was in a Ganassi car at Vegas, where you guys were. David, I think you did a great job last week of kind of lining out where could he go, where could he not go, what makes sense to keep his name in the mold with Honda. I have been in touch in the last week with I would say a very, very good source, probably one of the best sources on this. And I'll simply say that it wasn't confirmed. It also wasn't denied. And I do think if this were to happen, and if Yuki does come to IndyCar, it would be something that obviously Honda would be leading the charge to do to get him to IndyCar. As of right now, without the F1 season being finished up, he's an F1 driver. They're not going to be talking about anything else inside of his camp, and that's where we stand on that. But I did have a conversation with somebody very close to the situation this week, and that's where we stand on the Yuki Tsunoda news. We may get news that it's happening. We may get news that it's not happening. I think there's still a lot of contracts, a lot of negotiations, and sometimes you don't want things to be out there that could maybe close a door somewhere else on a line, or somebody says, oh, well, I already read that you're going here, so sorry, buddy, take care. We're not going to even open that conversation. So as of right now, nothing's been set in stone. Nothing's been signed. He is an F1 driver till the end of the season. Then we will see where he goes. Is it likely that he comes to IndyCar? Maybe. We'll see. But it's also, I would say it's a little bit less than 50-50 right now, but I think everybody's keeping this very close to the vest.
I think, as you pointed out last week, Tony, I think it says a lot when Coyne told us that he would have both drivers by Halloween. Yeah. And then this just keeps going along. I feel like it would have been pretty simple to just have signed Grosjean by now if that was the case. I think they're waiting for something. And an interesting comment I'll point it out here. It's been pointed out that it's almost Kiwi sources reporting the Yuki stuff. It's coping for Lawson staying in F1. I mean, like, the thing in F1 is Hadjar is most likely going to go to Red Bull, right? And Arvid Lindblad, I think for sure has an F1 seat next year. And I think Liam Lawson, it's pretty much a toss-up between Lawson and Yuki. That's what it's going to, I think that's going to be the deciding factor in whether or not we see Yuki in IndyCar. And then the option A is Yuki, A and B is Yuki stays in F1 in the Racing Bulls seat, and then Lawson goes. And there's even a chance, I would say, just purely speculation, I've heard zero anything, that Lawson could possibly be a candidate, right? Girlfriend lives in Phoenix, so he would want to be here. Option B, the opposite, Yuki goes to IndyCar. Those rumors are true. He could just stay as a reserve driver, as David pointed out.
What engine are the Racing Bulls also going to use the Ford next year, or are they using a Ferrari?
I can't remember.
Let me look that up, race fans.
I'm
keep going. Okay.
But also, I think, but just either way, there is a seat open at Racing Bulls, and I think they're probably going to sign one of the two guys they already have within Lawson or Yuki. I just don't. I mean, who knows which one? And if you're right, David, that the Racing Bulls are with Ford, then who knows? But they could also be doing. It could also be one of those deals where they're doing the Red Bull powertrains and it's still the Honda, not labeled as the Honda like they did a couple years ago, which would be weird. But I don't know if Ford has a full-blown powertrain ready for next season.
Well, no, Red Bull's always going to be building the Ford engine. That's always going to be it's always going to be a Red Bull powertrain. In fact, what's weird is that based on my understanding, the engine that's going in the Aston Martin essentially is a former design, or like the basis of the current Red Bull powertrain designed Honda engine, which is now going to be taken in-house by Honda themselves and then given to Aston Martin. That's my understanding, at least, of how that all is working. So that's kind of weird and confusing. And I suppose I should mention this as well, because I kind of feel like I boxed Yuki in as exclusively a Honda driver last week. And I suppose there is a scenario, like you mentioned, Kyle, where he stays within the Red Bull program, even if he's not driving specifically a Honda. I don't think that's very likely, in my opinion, but you never know. If Red Bull still feels high on Yuki, or they feel like he's beneficial to their program, you could go make a move for him. So to Tony's point, if you are trying to negotiate that sort of a contract, or you have a chance of staying at Red Bull, or you have a chance of going to Racing Bulls, if there is a Formula One seat out there, you've got to make sure your options are open. And, I think, to Kyle, your point, the fact that Roman Grosjean was not instantly signed the minute he stepped out of that Lamborghini, the fact that Todd Alt really wants Roman Grosjean and it hasn't been signed yet, and supposedly he's paying for 2 cars on that team, something else is happening behind the scenes. Now, whether that is Grosjean is just going to be signed December 31st, or, Linus Lundqvist is going to get that seat, or somehow Connor Daly is going to, hit the Powerball and take that seat, or if it's Yuki. But something's going on there. Something has brought that to a halt from where Dale felt, confident in saying, well, yeah, we're going to have both our drivers before Halloween. Well, it's past Halloween, and we still got a seat open at Dale Coyne Racing. And like I've said, that's become a much more attractive seat now that there's an Andretti tie. So I think it's going to be very interesting to see what happens here in the next couple of months with that.
Yeah, and I think Kyle made a good point a couple weeks ago, just on the fact that, okay, how did Grosjean leave when he was an Andretti driver, and then what have those fences been mended? Does Linus maybe have a little bit more budget? Is it Yuki? Is it something else? I mean, we've heard some rumors and speculation that Shank's interested in running possibly a third car, if not next year, the year after, inside of the IndyCar paddock. So this opens up a few other questions. We haven't heard anything from Prema, which the more that we don't hear from Prema, the more I'm going to believe that they are going to run it back next year as is. Obviously,
I know.
I
know that Prema is racing at the Super Nationals 28 in X30 Junior and KA Junior with Noah Baglin.
Well, I'll just be in that tent the whole time. Don't worry, guys. I'll break the news. They're going to kick me out of that tent before the end of the week is what's going to happen.
Obviously, there's some one-off entries in the Indianapolis 500 still open. That Brian Reinbold second seat, the McLaren fourth seat, which I guess the highly rumor was Ryan Hunter-Reay could possibly land that seat. But David, based on what you're hearing and where we sit here first week of November, what does next year's entry list look like? Has it changed from what we've been talking about over the last couple of weeks? Because, we're at a point now where you're kind of dying down a little bit in some of these talks. We always talk about, well, people will start talking when everybody gets together. And I think the next time that happens is probably PRI next month.
Yeah. Obviously now we've got an open seat at Andretti that we didn't know we had before, right? So that affects things a little bit. I think.
Yeah, Marco Andretti retired. We should probably talk about that, huh?
Yeah, well, I mean, you can certainly. I'm sure Tony's got some thoughts. I mean, but yes, Marco retired, so there's an open seat in Andretti, and I think that slowed down things as well because now all of a sudden, if you're looking at an Indy 500 only entry, do you go, well, wait a second? Now you've got potentially an Arrow McLaren open, you've got an Andretti open, you've got a Brian Reinbold seat open. I don't know if we're expecting any entries from outside of the entry list that we had last year. Yeah. I wouldn't be shocked if there was another one or two, but at least right now, I think we should kind of operate as though the 34 cars that were entered last year are the same 34 that are going to be entered this year, and be surprised if there's any other ones. So I don't know. I think that the 98 opened up suddenly creates a pretty interesting scenario for drivers like Connor Daly or Ryan Hunter-Reay, where you might pause and you go, wait a second, what's my best option here? So I think that's going to be another interesting thing as we kind of roll towards the end of the year, is how do some of these seats that we know are going to be available for the Indy 500 shake out?
And so we learned the news last week, kind of randomly on a Wednesday or Thursday morning, that Marco Andretti is retiring from all racing. He was celebrated. There was an awkward Roger Penske video that he sent out, and there was videos from every driver in the paddock that he had a relationship with, congratulating him on his career. And I think once that kind of dust settled, it became, David, is Colton Herta going to come back to run a one-off effort for the Indianapolis 500? And here's what I'm going to say. And people maybe are probably going to disagree and think that I'm crazy. Will Power has taken a step or two back at Indianapolis 500. Kyle Kirkwood has been in contention once, put a tire into the stands. Yes, it wasn't his fault. Marcus Ericsson was obviously second on course last year, was designated to the back of the field in the box score. Colton Herta hasn't had the best record at Indianapolis 500. And are you really willing to sacrifice and to distract him away from the ultimate goal by bringing him here to run in the Indianapolis 500, where we've seen him flip on Carb Day, we've seen him flip on qualifying day this year? I think he has a best finish of seventh in the Indianapolis 500 in 2020 maybe. Are you really going to bring Colton Herta back in a 98 car that hasn't been anywhere close to contention since the pole in 2020, and those would say by the pylon it was no longer in contention? Is that really something that you want to do, moving Colton Herta up with the goal to get him to F1?
I mean, I would have told you 2 weeks ago that absolutely not, that there's no way that they were going to do this. I'm kind of changing my tune on it. I think Colton probably wants to do it. I think if the option were presented to him, he would want to do it. I'll put it that way. I mean, obviously he's willing to do an IMSA Endurance Championship schedule, so he's not so locked down. And I get it; it's with Cadillac, right? So, you're aligned with the manufacturer you're going to be aligned with in Formula One, which makes it a little bit easier. But it just seems like too much of a perfect storm. Like, why would Marco step away now, all of a sudden opening up a seat at the Indy 500? And again, who knows who Dan Towers is going to pick for that seat. But, when you look at the options that are presented right now, and yes, you could go get a Ryan Hunter-Reay, which I think, obviously that team had a lot of success with Ryan. They won the Indy 500. You could go get a Connor Daly. Connor looked fantastic the one start he had with Andretti Autosport, what that team was called at the time, right? You could go get a Roman Grosjean if he's on the market, right? There are a lot of different drivers that would fit that car. But if you're looking at it from TWG's standpoint and getting headlines, generating hype for Colton Herta, and keeping his name out in front of the United States fans before you plan to put him in a Formula One car in 2027, the Indianapolis 500 is the undisputed now, by the way, by the TV ratings, the biggest race in the United States. It's not really, it's only a risk from the perspective of it's the fastest, most dangerous race in the world. But I think that from a marketing standpoint, from a building the brand standpoint, from building Colton Herta up, you lose almost nothing by putting him in that race, even if he's not necessarily super competitive. Having his name associated with that, having all the quote-unquote ink and people talking about him, interviewing him, because guess what? Even if he's 25th and runs 25th the entire time, you know what we're not? I hate to say this is super cynical. If Colton Herta runs the Indy 500, the last thing we're going to talk about is the Indy 500. We're going to talk about TWG, Formula One, and Cadillac F1. And I think that's exactly what they would want.
Yeah. I think, at the end of the day, Colton Herta is a competitor, and he's going to want to run in the world's biggest race, right? The one that means so much to everybody. And I think also the other perspective, if you're looking at it from Colton's side, is if all works out for him, he's not going to race an IndyCar for a long time, right? And, at this point in his life, if you want an F1 career to maybe go 5, 6, hell, 10 years, you're looking at your late 30s, mid 30s until you could run the Indianapolis 500 again, competitively and then in the right way at a full IndyCar season. I mean, so when you look at it on paper next season, you have the opportunity to do it maybe for one last time for hopefully, and your life and what you're trying to do, 10 years. Yeah, you take it. And to be fair to Colton, Tony, you're right. He hasn't had the best record, but I mean, he had a good run in his rookie year, blew up on the first lap, and it feels like he has a car. And, damn, like last year, he put in a hell of a ballsy qualifying run. Like he can drive at the speedway, but just an unfortunate crash in practice usually just, too many times has had him kind of limping during the race. And we've never gotten to see him be up there. And Kirkwood has easily been the best Andretti car. I think, but I don't think it discredits that he's one of the best drivers in the IndyCar series. And coming into each month of May, we'll always have that question of, can he do it? Because we know that he has the skill to do it. It's not a question. It's just nothing has gone his way.
David, is it all kind of starting to make a little bit of sense? We saw the TWG livery on the number 98 for the test with Lockheed Hughes. Maybe this is an opportunity to get a livery that's going to look similar to their Formula One liveries, run the Indianapolis 500. Is it all starting to make sense that maybe these drivers knew that Marco Andretti was going to retire? Maybe when Colton sent out that cynical tweet about, hey, I'm never going to give you up. I'm never going to let you down. Maybe he was referring to, hey, he already knew that he was going to run the Indianapolis 500 in 2026. Is it all kind of just starting to make a little bit of sense?
Well, he did tell me it wasn't his last IndyCar race in Nashville. And Colton rarely lies to me. So I would say that was probably not do I think he's been masterminding an Indy 500 run this entire time? No. But I think everybody knew that Marco's time was coming up. I don't think we necessarily thought it would be this year or next year, but it was going to be sometime in the next 2 years, right?
We had all heard that this was a 2-year deal, and last year was year one. So there is maybe some tea leaves to read into that. Okay, are they totally going away from the Andretti name? There's still a lot of things to be solved when it comes to that. But yeah, I was shocked when it wasn't on the radar, and I even said it on the show last week. Everything that I heard is that Marco's going to be back in the 98 because that's a 2-year deal with the sponsor Maypie.
Yeah. So again, I think there was always the possibility that existed. And I certainly don't think that if you're Colton Herta, you ever wanted to close the door on IndyCar. And you also don't want to burn the house down on your way out. You're right. Like, I think that's another thing that a lot of people kind of forget in racing is that, sometimes you want people to like you. Like, maybe don't, even if you aren't necessarily at the time planning on running any more IndyCar races, you don't just get there and anytime somebody sticks a purple mic in your face, say, "Oh, hell no, I'm done with IndyCar. I'm a Formula One driver now," right? You always leave that door cracked. You always leave a good feeling in people. And there's nothing wrong with people talking. Like, again, would we be talking about Colton Herta? I mean, I suppose we could talk about him testing that F2 car in torrential downpour at Monza, but like, would we be even talking about Colton Herta on this show? But now we are, because there's a remote possibility that he could drive in the Indy 500, right? So, not too bad.
If you're Connor or you're Ryan Hunter-Reay, where do you want to land for next year's Indianapolis 500? I would, this is a Ryan Reinbold car that was very close to winning the Indianapolis 500 with Ryan Hunter-Reay in it. It's a McLaren car, which obviously, Kyle Larson had speed. Kyle Larson was in the middle of row 2 to start. Obviously, I think, the setbacks that he had in April led to not the best Indianapolis 500 in May this year, which obviously led to the crash on the restart in turn 2 mid-race. But what's your best option to contend for an Indianapolis 500 win? Is it that McLaren Ford car? Is it probably the top car? I mean, I know Jack Harvey's in the 23, but is it that 24 car, the 23 car at the Ryan Reinbold?
No, I think until that AMSP car goes off the board, I think that's the number one pick. I mean, yes, like did Arrow McLaren look nearly as good last year as they have in previous years? I would say no. I think that, but also you have drivers who are, not as good at the speedway, right? Like Lundgaard, it was his first time driving a car anywhere near that capable on a super speedway. Nolan Siegel struggled to qualify the year before, had a lot of confidence issues, needed to get that confidence up. Kyle Larson was, in my opinion, completely distracted, and that's why he had a terrible month of May. So I think if you go back 2 or 3 years and you look at drivers like Tony Kanaan jumping in there, Kyle Larson when he was laser focused on the Indy 500, Pato O'Ward obviously can just have crazy pace in that car, no matter if it's good, bad, or ugly. But I think that a Ryan Hunter-Reay or a Connor Daly or, let's throw Colton Herta's name in there. Screw it. Why not? Right. If any of those drivers who are potentially on the market to drive a car at the Indy 500, that's your first pick in the draft. And I get it that Dreyer was really close last year. I would actually say of the 3 options presented to me, and this is going to sound crazy, and I might get some pushback for this, I think the last option is that 98 car.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the results simply haven't been there. You can say maybe that's driver, that's team. It is very hard to show up at Indianapolis Motor Speedway and have a one-off effort to run the Indianapolis 500. I mean, that's very hard to do. It's very hard to do for a Ryan Reinbold who focuses on this one race, has a full-time pit crew that is practicing almost every day. It's a hard race to win as a full-time driver. It's even harder to win as a part-time one-off effort with the one goal in mind to win the Indianapolis 500. I mean, we talked about this incessantly. Obviously, they were testing the brakes at last week when Alexander Rossi was testing at IMS. You think about Takuma Sato's pit stop that kind of screwed him up. A lot of these part-time efforts, and even full-time efforts have problems in the pits, but we certainly 1 or 2 one-off entries always have a problem in the pits when it comes to the Indianapolis 500 that ultimately ends up knocking them out of contention. But yeah, Marco Andretti retiring, a 20-year career, 2 wins, pole at the Indianapolis 500. There's a lot going on, I think, inside of IndyCar. Marco leaving. I did want to mention this because it's, if you know us or you know me, it's kind of a little bit on the same ladder. There is an important job that is open right now, David. You and I discussed this on the phone. Yep. The Indianapolis Star job is open. So
media silly season, everybody.
Yeah. It's interesting to me if you look at the
funny. Hold on, real quick. Just as like someone who's not from Indiana, right? From Indianapolis. This is such a weird niche sports thing that the Gannett writer for Indianapolis is such an important position that it's being talked about industry wide. That is so weird.
This is
I
so
just want to
funny
point that out.
because this is exact Kyle. That's crazy. Kyle was not briefed on what we were about to talk about with this. This is exactly what Tony and I were talking about on the phone. Continue, Tony.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's we were thinking about, okay, is there another? I mean, college football is one thing, right? Because if you're in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, you're going to have an Alabama football writer, right? But that's big time. And we talk about a niche market and having one writer, and you could even say, well, yeah, how important is it? Because if you look on the job description, it's an hourly position, right? Like, so how important really is it if you're not going to put this person on salary? It is very niche. It is only here. I mean, I think David and I talked about, I'm sure the Charlotte Observer probably has a dedicated NASCAR writer. Okay, we get that. But like outside of that, I don't even know what a good example is, right? Like, it's not like, I don't know. Is there a surfing newspaper reporter in Hawaii somewhere? We don't know. It is an important job because there's a lot of people that are just mechanically inclined to go to the Indianapolis Star. That's where they get their information. So we did want to bring that up because, it is a part of media. It is a part of what we do. At times, I guess there could be a little bit of a rivalry. And everybody's kind of like you talked about earlier, David. It was a great point. Everybody, we do want those quotes. We do want those, the dramatic storylines, we didn't see this coming, we need to talk about it. Now we want to do it in a fair sense where we're not screwing over a driver or pissing off a driver where he corners you in a bathroom somewhere. But it is an important job, and it is important to continue to grow the sport, because I think ultimately the three of us on this show, the 189 people right now that are watching and listening, and the thousands more that will watch, we ultimately want this sport to continue to grow, because when it grows, it becomes more popular. It's more in demand. We can go and buy these things that we want to buy inside of stores. We probably in the media are going to make a little bit more money if it's more popular. I've thought about if we did what we do in NASCAR full time, or Formula One full time, or with the Colts full time. I mean, it'd be through the roof. I mean, it really would. So there are a lot of great things that are going on in IndyCar right now. We're trying to and I can be just as negative as everybody else at times. But it is an important job. So I did want to mention that they did officially post that today. Other than that, what else is going on, guys? We got about 5 minutes before we wrap up. Kyle, what you got going on?
There was a bit of personnel change in IndyCar. I got three things to talk about. There was Brian Barnhart and Kyle Sagan left Aaron McLaren to join Rahal. So Rahal joins Brian Barnhart. Now there are two former IndyCar employees working for that team, which is crazy. Just
the good old boys club.
And then this one's huge. Olivier Boisson, who had been working for Andretti since Romain Grosjean got there. Before that, he was working with Grosjean at Dale Coyne. I can't remember how long he worked for Coyne. I don't think he got there with Grosjean. I think he'd been there a couple of years. Yeah, he'd been there since the Bourdais years.
Him and Bourdais.
And before that, he was on the KB Racing Squad in 2013, which is funny because we were during the TK at the tour of the shop. TK was telling us. He did not mention that. Well, he didn't mention anyone coming, but he did mention that KB squad and how they had the best people, and he learned a lot from that. Which is, hey, he brought back one of the KB guys. So Aaron McLaren's street course dampers. Keep an eye on that next season. That could make a difference. Last thing I want to talk about that is kind of dude bros. We got a Stern bomb today that I think we talked about in May, because David and I heard this in May. And, I shot some texts and figured it out, and, it was true. And Stern dropped it today that Connor Zilic is looking to run the Indianapolis 500 with Justin Marks, but not next year because there's too short. So hopefully in 2027,
he didn't have enough
we'll
IndyCar
Connor.
super license points because he didn't win the Xfinity Championship.
We heard the rumor that Justin Marks was at the track. I think it was opening day of practice, maybe day 2. And David and I, immediately we kept keeping our eyes out. I asked some people and tried to see if that was real. And I got a yes. So I felt pretty good about that one. And I believe we talked about it in May at one point. I need to go get that clip and get my Twitter clout. I need to go back and get my Twitter clout, I guess. But yeah, I mean, that's going to be awesome. I think while he's young, for him to do the 500, I think it's the perfect time. I want him to do. I want him to do as many racing series as he can while he's young. because I'm biased. The damn car is on my water bottle, right?
Oh,
I've covered him in karting since he was like 14. I've known him for so long, so I'm always going to think and tell you guys that he's one of the greatest race car drivers of my generation. But once he got into LMP2 and did the things he was doing, once he got into the Xfinity Series, he's just validated everything that I thought since he was in karting, right? So I'm not saying that he is the greatest race car driver of my generation yet. It's what I believe, but I can only tell you that every time I've thought that, he's just validated. And if he continues to do it, then it's going to be something amazing to watch as his career evolves and as he gets older, because he's only 19. He's only 19. That's crazy.
I want to say this. I think it was kind of rumored that, okay, and I know David talked with Zach Brown in Toronto about, okay, who could that possible fourth McLaren entry at the Indianapolis 500 be? And obviously Connor's name would have been somebody that had been mentioned. And I'll say this, Kyle. I mean, I look at maybe things a little bit like you do from a media side. Like, what driver can I go talk to and have an actual conversation with and can present himself? Because I've worked with a lot of USF 2000 kids that couldn't talk to a media person at the age of 17, 18, or 19 years old if their life depended on it. I talked to Connor Zilic the day before the Xfinity race for like 3-4 minutes, and the dude was totally down to earth, totally respectable, knew what the heck was going on, knew the importance of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. I think a lot of people, including myself, when you go to a NASCAR race and you're kind of an outside reporter because you're used to IndyCar, you want to know how they feel about coming to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and being able to race on the oval, sometimes for the first time, like it was for Connor. And I was totally impressed with that. And I think that has a lot to do with success on the track. If you can communicate inside of a race car, if you can keep a cool head, if you have patience and you don't let things get to you, that ultimately drives your results on the racetrack just as much as it does off.
I think, the other interesting part is that I think Trackhouse would want to do it themselves. And they've been vocal about wanting to expand not only in IndyCar, but into other motorsports and kind of they've already gone into MotoGP, which was the strangest first series to kind of branch out into, but they did it. They ran the Rolex 24 last year and with a Corvette. So David, what are your thoughts? Because I think we all agree that Connor's a natural talent, one of the best that we've seen in a long time in the sport. But what are your thoughts kind of on Trackhouse joining IndyCar? And what are the possibilities you think of them getting a car for 27?
I think it's pretty good. I think that maybe not 27. I think it would probably be exploratory. It'd probably be partnered with somebody. But I think 28, when you have a new car, when you have an opportunity to buy all new equipment and essentially be on the same level playing field with everybody, I think there's going to be a serious look from the Trackhouse side of things. And I think 27, the Indy 500 could be that kind of exploratory. Do we like doing this? Do we have the capability to do this sort of thing? I think with Connor, to your point, Tony, I can tell you pretty assuredly that no talks have taken place with McLaren as of this time to put Connor in one of those cars. I know that was heavily rumored, or at least that was speculated at one point. But again,
But you're constantly evaluating, right?
No, I didn't actually get. When I asked, I didn't get constantly evaluating. The person I asked actually didn't know who Connor Zilic was until the person heard that. Yeah. So
we like her though. We like
I
her.
I can tell you that it was not on the radar. So at least at that point, right? No. I mean, like that was not said to diminish anyone. That was said because that's how I can tell you that it was not on the radar, right? That being said, I think that you could see a possibility like that in the future. It kind of depends what direction Justin Marks wants to go. Do you want to buy an aging DW12 just to do a one-off race? I mean, maybe if a team's having a fire sale, but if you partnered with a Dreyer and Reinbold, or if you went to a McLaren, I'm not saying that couldn't happen in the future. That would be an interesting possibility. I think the one thing too that I would just like to say is the most. I'm going to state the obvious. Any double attempt or any driver who comes from outside of IndyCar to do or try the Indianapolis 500, I think helps the Indianapolis 500. That's almost always been a part of what the Indy 500 is. The Indy 500 is almost a championship in and of itself. And I know that it's a part of a championship now. I know that IndyCar is very heavily dependent on the Indy 500. And, anytime you have an American Open Wheel Championship, it's almost always going to be wholly dependent on the Indy 500. but I think something about the Indy 500 should always kind of feel like it's its own independent race. And when you have drivers like Connor Zilisch or Kyle Larson or Fernando Alonso come over and do this race, I think it is the best thing that this race could have. So the more of that we see, the happier I'll be. And it's not like it needs it, by the way. It doesn't need it next year, but I think I love to see it when it happens.
Well, quickly to that point, I think every year for the last 2017, 2017, I think every year since the 100th, we have had a driver with star power come to Indianapolis 500, whether it was Fernando Alonso. You could say Danica Patrick, right? I get that. 2019 should have been Fernando Alonso again. Obviously, that didn't happen. Obviously, the Kyle Larson thing in the last couple of years, we've had a driver come in with a major storyline. And you would hope that Kyle Larson has kind of paved the way for some of these younger drivers to, one, have interest in doing it, and two, doing it the proper way, because there was a lot that goes into it, right? I mean, how many miles do you think Kyle Larson put on a jet going back and forth between Charlotte and Indy, and then Charlotte and then Indy? And then, hey, this dude flew into Indy, ran the Indy 500, flew to Charlotte, and then flew back to Indy, all within like a 24-hour, 16-hour period to run both races and come back for the banquet. So it is an absolute grind to do when you do the double.
Well, to be fair, he crashed on lap 1.
Well, didn't make the flight any less. So for everybody that is in our chat right now, there's 171 of you. Thank you. I will draw. All you got to do is send me a message or send me a tweet at Tony D Indy. And I'm going to give away this cool Marco Andretti. We're going to give away an autograph card. Yeah, it's an autograph. So if you're a Marco fan, send me a picture of you and Marco or a picture of his car. And you have until, let's call it 11 a.m. tomorrow, because I want to reward the people that are watching live. So got a Marco card for you. I'll send it out, or we can arrange a pickup sometime. So that's all I got, boys. Get to the museum. Speaking of NASCAR, see those Brickyard winners before they are out. The Marmon Wasp is back in there, which is awesome. Parnelli's car's back in there. Johnny Parsons' car's back in there. So make sure you get out to the museum. David, huge video that you released today. Let fans know what to check out on your channel.
Yeah, just uploaded our little tour that Kyle and I filmed with Tony Kanaan, taking a look at the new Arrow McLaren shop, which is the old Andretti shop. Tony gives some great stories about that place in the past and kind of looks forward to the future. He also, without me prompting him, says that Arrow McLaren's looking at an IMSA program. So you should tune in. I know. And I about fell over. I've had a lot of moments this year, Tony. You've seen a couple of them where I've about fallen over. That was one of them. And I'll tell you what, DL 500 Club as well. If you want to talk to me, that'll be Wednesday at 8. So yeah,
that's awful dangerous of you to take Kyle to the Arrow McLaren headquarters when they have a digital media, multimedia producer role open that he'd be great for. I'm not saying he's applying for it, but that's dangerous. You might lose your guy there.
Look, at the end of the day, I just want everybody to be happy and get paid. There's a lot of, believe it or not, we were just complaining about how there's no money in racing, but I know of a couple of different roles that are open right now that that people like Kyle should apply for. I'll just put it that way. So
I don't get interviews. I'm not verified.
Oh.
On that note, we'll see you guys next Tuesday. We are going to take a few Tuesdays off. We'll let you know when that is.
Yeah, we might have to take next. We're going to be a Super Nats, man.
Yeah, so, we'll keep you posted on that. But thank you so much for tuning in. Like and subscribe, share, and we'll see you on the next episode of Unverified.